Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. And today I'm delighted to welcome back returning special guest, Michael Stone. And we're going to be picking up on, I will actually put the previous episode in the show notes. So you can go back and watch that or listen to that after this if you haven't already done so. Because we're going to be picking up on where we got to in that episode and going into more depth about being more self-aware, more self-regulating in relation to our own trauma, and a bit more about Michael's trauma work. Although Michael's new book, The Wisdom of Belonging, actually takes a slightly different tack on that, which I'm fascinated to hear about. So Michael is a spiritual author, mentor, shamanic practitioner, radio host, producer, and trauma integration facilitator who co-creates individual and group environments and experiences that support people in transcending the myth of separation to experience deep interconnection with others and all of life. He's been teaching and leading experiential events, classes, teleseminars, and workshops on organizational development, embodied shamanism, moving meditation, personal growth, and spiritual fulfillment for almost 50 years. And I first met Michael on the dance floor about 20 years ago or something, 15, 20 years ago.
It's been more than that, hasn't it?
Oh, quite, yes. And you can find Michael at welloflight.com, which is such a beautiful name for a website. So, Michael, thank you so much for coming back on the show for a second visit.
It is my pleasure, Catherine. Always good to be with you.
Thank you. So I kind of, you were starting to talk about your new book before we started recording. And I said, stop. We should be recording this. So would you like to kick off by telling us about this amazing new book that is coming out?
This is the best thing I think that I have ever written. After 3 books, this is really one I want to leave behind. I'm in my 80s now, and uh, thinking about legacy. What do I leave behind? That kind of thing. And the other work I've been doing is successful, but I got to thinking about it, and I really went, this is really about belonging. And the new book is called The Wisdom of Belonging: Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and the Journey Home. And the basic kind of structure of my thinking is we were born in relationship. I mean, we were carried in our mother's body. Our ancestors are behind us. All of this, it's all about connection. And we have a pandemic of loneliness, a pandemic of separation and divisiveness right now in the world. And yet, our natural way of being is in connection. We were born in connection. So we start out and connect, and then there's this kind of great forgetting. And separation is a learned behavior, and it really starts with the shift in science, the Newtonian Cartesian paradigm of if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. And that even deepened what was already happening with all the wars and the burning at the stake and the horrible things that we've done to each other. And all of those things are still in our body. We think, oh, our ancestors are gone, but they're not gone. They're in our body. So we carry a lot of the protected parts, the legacies of our ancestors. And that's really important. So we learned to be separated. So this book is about belonging, remembering that we belong. We belong to ourself. We belong to each other. We belong to our ancestors. We belong to the human race. We belong to nature, and we belong to spirit, to the higher. And all of that is part of us. And we have such a limited perspective on who we are in the world. But this book is really about learning to return to that place, remembering that place of belonging. Not about fixing, not about getting rid of anything, none of that. It's really about discovering the truth of who we are as a human being. So that's the basic premise of the book.
Well, what a beautiful premise. I mean, I've had moments of feeling like I really, really belong. And suddenly in that moment,
Mhm.
I've still got all my flaws and everything else, but they just don't matter as much. And what you were saying just really reminded me of that.
Yeah.
You're like held.
What we call flaws are the very thing that allows us to deepen our relationship to ourself instead of trying to fix and get rid of when we turn towards it. This is the mystical principles. And it's so beautiful how mysticism and science and neuroscience are now coming together and basically saying the same thing. So modern science is catching up with ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
So, the whole turning toward what I've been turning away from is the access. There's nothing to fix. It's actually the map is in our triggering, in the things we resist, the things we push away. That is the map to healing our relational self.
Now that's a very big idea that the triggers and everything are the map to healing our relational self.
Yeah.
Would you like to say I'd love you to say a bit more about that, Michael, because although I've got my sense of what that means, I feel like you've got an understanding of a whole number of components of how that actually works.
I think you have to start with the nervous system. And the nervous system has been evolving for hundreds of thousands of years. And it's been evolving in a particular way to protect us, which was appropriate, when there were wildebeests and, we were out there. It was really an appropriate thing that in an overwhelming situation, and think a zebra in the savannah, and the lion is coming, and the attack, and then the zebra lives but gets up and shakes it off. Well, we don't shake off those hits. They land in our nervous system. And the nervous system is really important to recognize. No, we now look at the world in a way that Catherine's over here and I'm over here, right? And we're separate. It's obvious. You're in London, I'm in California. It's very clear, but we know each other and we have a history together, which is part of the thing that gets us stuck too. But there's another way of knowing someone. And my capacity to really know you, Catherine, and whoever's listening, is that I can feel you in my nervous system. I can sense you in my nervous system, in my body. This is 50 years of Gabrielle Roth finally getting it, Oh, I feel you in my body. I sense you in my body. You are in my nervous system. And my capacity to know you is directly proportionate for me to know and be in my body. And the more I'm in my body, the more capacity I have to feel you. So my nervous system knows you at a much higher level than my cognitive system. And when I feel you, we have a thing in the workshops I do, feeling myself, feeling you, and feeling you, feeling me, and the space between us. And so that sense of the nervous system has been protecting us all along. So in an overwhelming situation, there's a dispersion and a fragmentation of our essence. And what happens is that overwhelm, the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the trigger, whatever it is, it gets lodged in the body as either tension or numbness. And then we protect ourselves, and that's what, more and more keeps us separate. And we forget we were already connected. I call it the great forgetting. Okay. So, and when you really think about I like to compare the nervous system to, and looking at someone like looking at the moon. You know, we just had this big full moon. It was so beautiful. You look up and you go, wow, that's so great, the full moon, and you think about it, but what we don't ever really think about when we look at the moon is how much that moon influences us. It influences our biology, it influences our moods. Sometimes it makes you want to get into a bar fight. Sometimes it makes you want to fall in love. I mean, all these things are going on, and it's the moon, and the energy of the moon is moving the water, which is the emotions in our body,
Mm.
which is incredible. But we don't think about that like a human being. Every time I'm with you and I feel you, it's like the moon shining on me. I can feel all the amazing things, your ancestors, what happened, your legacy, your pain, your joy, all of that. But we've numbed that to protect ourselves.
Right. And
So
it sounds like you're saying that this happens because we're not like the zebra. We don't shrug it off. We take it
we don't
into the
shake
nervous
it
system.
off. We don't stay in the body. We leave our body.
Yeah.
Animals don't leave their body. They feel it. And when we feel it, that's what integration is. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need to get rid of anything. Celebrate your pain in a way, because if I turn towards it and I bring awareness to it, it no longer has a stranglehold on me. Because um, and people think, oh, I got to get rid of this. I got to change this. No, no, you need to feel it. And just the awareness of the repetition compulsion of the way we protected ourselves, just the awareness is all you need. Because when I have awareness about it, then I have choice, and I can choose whether or not um, I'm going to react, or I'm going to go deeper and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to feel you. And that's amazing.
Yeah. And also, as you're
That's
talking,
integration. That you
yeah,
don't need to get rid of anything. It just becomes history. Integrated past is deepening presence. Unintegrated past is destiny, repetition.
mm,
And why is it repetition? Because the body wants to heal. It wants to connect. It wants to relate. It's trying to relate. Get out of your head and get in your heart.
yeah. So it keeps repeating the thing
Yeah,
until
it's
you
called
actually,
repetition compulsion. It just, and you wonder why. I know how I shouldn't do that, and I should fix this, and all these things in our head. Yeah, but what you know doesn't help. It's what you feel, what you sense, what you can actually sense in your body. And so this is a real shift, I think, in the dynamic of personal growth. It turns the whole personal growth thing upside down. So I'm excited about it. You can tell probably.
I can tell. And also just in the way that you're communicating, you were saying you can feel me, I can feel you. When you're communicating like that, that actually makes it easier for me to get a feeling or a sense of you because you're allowing yourself to come out and express. And I think, isn't that not another aspect of trauma where we're not only not feeling, we're also not coming out so that we can be felt? Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, we're all longing to be seen, but we're scared to be seen because these are all built-in patterns. This is the great forgetting. This is the myth of separation. So, the one of the first practices is really presencing. How do I presence? People talk about present and relationship. So this right away is a problem because presence and relationship are nouns. So we learned in school a noun is a person, place, or thing, Mrs. Smith, right? So we learned that. But how do I know, let's say, I'm in a relationship with you? If I'm in a relationship, I've already stopped the emergence of my connection with you because I look to my past that says, this is who Catherine is.
Yeah.
But I'm not discovering you newly. I'm not presencing. I'm not bringing you into me and feeling you in my body. People, we've been married 50 years. Well, you've been living side by side. I don't know about relating, because relating is a verb. It's
It-
emergent. And
yes.
that's what we've gotten stuck. We've lost the capacity to be emergent in our life.
I think that's so true. And how many relationships, to use that word, die the minute you call it a relationship? Because
Yes.
then, by definition, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Um, And as well with, I've heard people say a human being is not a thing, it's a process, and what
Exactly,
you're saying really
exactly.
matches with that.
Yeah, yeah. And, you have to start with your own work, So there's the first part is really remembering ourselves and the wisdom of the body and beginning to explore the lenses through which we see the world. We look at the world and we say, that's reality. No, that's your perception that's shaped by the lenses that you look through. A father, a lawyer, a dancer, whatever. I have all these lenses that I view what I learned in school, what I learned in culture, what I learned in my family, what was passed down to me as legacy burdens for generation after generation after generation. So I have to begin to see with new eyes and to see the lens. What's the lens that I'm looking through? We don't, we think, oh, that's reality. No, that's not reality. That's the lenses that you see reality through that you then, um, what is it? I reify that into a structure, so habits of habits are ways of seeing things, but they're also crystallized structures in our body. They can't move. They're stuck. So with Gabrielle's work, this to me is the, oh, I'm starting to learn what she was saying 40 years ago, but
Yes,
it's
absolutely, because she used to have us moving on the dance floor, and you didn't have to understand rationally what was going on inside your body for it to go on, for it to happen, and for stuff to be unraveled and healed, which was one of the reasons I love that form of that practice, that conscious movement practice, because you don't have to analyze everything up the wazoo and explain it to somebody. You can just have it happen and come out the other side. Something's shifted. It's not going to go back.
yeah.
So I
Are
want
you
to go back to
are you
some.
still teaching? Are you still
Um,
doing the teaching side
I've
of it?
actually incorporated the movement work into, with some other things, into a new practice I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Beautiful.
Called freedom of spirit, which I think a lot of people do. A lot of people who teach five rhythms or other practices, and like you're doing, everything you've just been talking about is very much sounds like someone describing a dance, but they're not talking necessarily about bare feet on a dance floor. You're talking about the dance of life and connection. You know,
And Catherine, recognizing each other's song. I think that's the beauty of this. When I can listen with my whole body to you, I can hear your song. I can feel your song, and I can dance to your song. That's
amazing. I love
it
that.
is, it
That's
is
brilliant.
amazing.
I want to go back to something you were saying before about, we think our ancestors are all dead, but know that it's all still in us. And you mentioned um, the wounded aspect of that. And,
Yeah.
Since the whole enlightenment, in quotes, scientific stuff coming in, um, do you find as well when you're working with people that they're able to go back and find the ancestral way of being that was before that, when they were more connected to nature and spirit and essence? Is that still accessible, do you
That's
find?
a huge part of my teaching, actually, is working with the ancestors. In the Western culture, we really do not have a good relationship with our ancestors. they're they're in the ground. They're dead and buried. People say, forget what happened then. No, what happened then has shaped us. It's in us. Everything that our ancestors ever did. That's the part of the years of my teaching shamanism, was to really attune with the ancestors and to meet my ancestors viscerally. I had an interesting experience. Um, I got poison oak really bad out in the woods, and I had to take this steroid medicine, and it just buzzed me out, and I was finishing up the book. I didn't sleep for 3 days, and I'm laying in bed at night, and I can't sleep, and I thought, okay, I'll do just meditate because I'm a pretty heavy I'm heavily meditated. Uh, and so I did this 7-hour meditation. while I had this stuff in my body that was keeping me awake. And I had the most amazing meditation. I had conversations with ancestors I never knew show up. I had information from my father and my mother that came in really strongly. One of the things I was, when I first started doing ancestor work, you kind of find a benevolent guide. That's one of the ways to get into the ancestral stream and begin to feel the ancestors in your bones and your blood and your breath. And so I said, okay, I want to find, um, an ancestor that can guide me in this work. So I did a journey and I did all the stuff you do in a journey. And now, to give some backstory that people don't know, my traumatized a love story. My mother and father were both at Pearl Harbor in the bombing. They were seriously, this is what started my work, was way before, even in utero. I was in this place. My mother was affected very heavily, was, under doctor's care after the war. She tried to kill me on a regular basis, and then I found her hanging when I was 2.5. My father was, out to lunch, and shell shock. So I do this journey and say, okay, I want a benevolent ancestor to show up. Give me one. And so, only about 20% of journeys people actually see something. But in this one, I went in and immediately, all of a sudden, out of this cloud appears my mother with her arms outstretched. And I was like, I was just, and that's been my ally ever since, and we talk regularly, and I am so grateful for the brilliant, my mother before the war was a concert pianist, was an artist, was, an amazing person, but I never really realized that until I started feeling into what were the gifts of my ancestors. So we talk a lot about the burdens of our ancestors, the legacies that we want to get rid of, we want to fix. No, no. You heal your ancestors when you do the work that they couldn't do. That's your legacy. That's how you evolve. That's how evolution works. We have stopped evolution by not feeling the world.
That's such a powerful idea. That is such a powerful idea. And I think that's one of the reasons I think that's so important, Michael, is because, and I mean, I'm not working with trauma, so I just go with what people have shared with me, right? But you tell me whether this feels right. So I, I think often if people have some wounding or they feel they have some trauma, often they think, no, I should not invest in working with that or healing that because I'm just doing it for me. They don't realize that when they do it for themselves, they're doing it for everybody.
Mm,
Actually everybody now, but also everybody in the past.
mm.
And if they understood that, it might help them. Is
Oh,
this
it's perfect. That's exactly. There's a poet, Wang Po. He says, "Why are you unhappy?" Poets repeat themselves. Why
yes,
are you unhappy? He says, "Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you do and say is about yourself, and there isn't one. There's no self. There is just the big self." So we have this egoic perspective of I'm separate and I'm a rugged individual, that's killing us. Individuation is really important because that's how we mature, how we grow, how we become who we are and how we evolve. But this idea of I did it my way, what's that song, I did it my
Frank
way.
Sinatra song, yes.
Frank Sinatra, right? Okay, no, no, you are not a separate self. You are absolutely connected, but that's the process that we're talking about. Because first we have to do our inner work and begin to recognize and integrate those parts of us that we had to. It's an intelligence. It's not a problem. We had to shut parts of ourselves down to survive. We had to adapt in order to belong. We had to push our essence down in order to survive, and be loved. So it's, that's just what happens. But individualism is, creating more separation, but individuation is the evolution and involvement of myself as an ecosystem within a larger ecosystem of which we are all a part.
Yes. So it's in a way, it's about being even more of a team player than not. I've got a question I want to ask you, Michael, because something I've noticed actually in myself and also in other people I've spoken to is sometimes people carry in themselves in relation to some sort of trauma. They're blaming themselves for the trauma, where they think, oh, if I'd done more, that wouldn't have happened. Let's say, because my mother, for example, died very young, and I realized that although I was very a young child, part of me thought it was my fault. A part of me thought I hadn't done enough to make it possible for her to stay. And now that's a big burden for a child to carry, and that can really interfere with someone's life. And obviously, it can interfere with their ability to reach out for help as well. So, what would you say to people who might be carrying that sort of thing?
Mm. Well, I certainly know that place with my mother's suicide and,
Yeah.
taking on the burden of it must have been my fault because, the story I left the train on and then next thing and I got scolded and then I found her dead. Or my wife when she was murdered, I wasn't there. What could I have done? I should have been there. But this work is the end of should have, the end of someday. So this whole idea of the ideal place I should be. You know, if I do this, then I can get here is exactly the problem that takes us out of the presencing of this moment and being here. So when those things come up to begin to recognize, wait, how is that story protecting me, protecting my fragile heart? And so when we then look at it from a perspective of this is a gift for me to become more present because what I'm doing here is trying to avoid the pain that I'm feeling instead of recognizing that that pain is a doorway to my growth and evolution and the fullest expression of my soul. So
How does blaming ourselves for something that happened to us in our lives, how does that protect us from our pain?
it protects us because it keeps us from feeling the actual pain, feeling the physical pain that
Um,
goes with it. So I don't want to feel the fear. I don't want to feel the pain, the anxiety, the stress. So because at one point in space and time, it didn't feel good. It wasn't safe. So I blocked it out. I pushed it down. So if I can actually allow myself to notice, oh, I have these shoulds that I should be a different way. What is that about? That's about protecting myself and maintaining a story, which is often um, a um, a contract with our ancestors too
yeah.
because that's what a legacy burden is. My grandmother suffered because she lost her husband and three children in Auschwitz, and that in three generations there's still, and I've worked with so many people that are carrying and the Holocaust was a horrible thing, but many of us are carrying the contract to suffer over it rather than feeling the enormity and immensity and letting the tears and the feelings come through. So they're not running us. They're part of being human. I'm a human being having an experience of something that I've been carrying for my ancestors. So it's a contract. We have to break that contract. And a good way to break that is family constellation, Bert Hellinger's work, which I'm sure
Um,
are when I studied with Bert back in the 70s and 80s. Um,
Lucky you.
yeah, I was happened to be in Amsterdam when he was doing a bunch of work
Of
there.
course you were. Right.
I know. I have a charmed life, I just
You seriously have.
I look back and I go, how did I run into that person, And
Yeah.
but anyway, Bert's levels of love. that he came up with, which is also based on what's his name? Mm, forgot his name.
Mm.
I'm in my 80s now, you know.
You've forgotten more stuff than most people have ever even learned.
Anyway, where was I going with that?
The constellations is very good for.
Yeah. Oh, constellations. Yeah, because you can begin to see the field, and you can see it in a way where in a constellation, you have an issue, and then someone represents you, and then the person leading it. It's very hard to explain because it's so experiential. But please, people will form and say things that allows you to see the structures of your evolution through your family system. So it's it's one of those things that it sounds like magic, and you watch it and you go, wow, that's amazing. And I used to use that when in my organizational development work, because an organization is like a family system. And you put the people together and you begin to see how, this person became a martyr, this person became, angry, ordering top down, all these things that happen, silos and things in organizations, which I'm actually teaching a course now, bringing this kind of awareness into organizational systems.
Oh,
So
good for
I'm
you. That's
excited.
great.
I've got 21 consultants from 14 countries that I'm working with to bring this kind of awareness and teaching into organizational systems, which I think is a real leading edge place for bringing it right now.
Well, I'd say that's genius. That's absolutely brilliant. I just want to say something to the listeners, actually, which is, we're listening to Michael and it's fascinating. I just want to remind everybody that Michael is working with a whole series of different kinds of people in many, many different ways. So,
Mm.
don't be listening for, I'm running a 3-week course on this, which is for secretaries who live in Milwaukee. If you're resonating to this, do reach out to Michael's website. I'll just say again what it is, welloflight.com, because he's probably got something that will be really interesting and useful for you. Something I love about this, Michael, is you are still constantly learning and opening deeper and deeper yourself. And that's what really struck me last time. And it's why I asked you back, because I felt like you're representing something about the human spirit that just keeps playing in the sandbox of discovery, doesn't it? So I love
I've
the
been
way.
so fortunate, Catherine. Like I said, I mean, so much of my life, just stumbled onto people like Gabrielle Roth. I've been with Thomas Hubel now for 10 years. I love edgy people, and earlier in my life, I had a lot of really amazing teachers that I just stumbled into, as a vagabond hitchhiking around the world.
Well, and you're now one of those teachers that people can stumble into as well. You
Yeah,
know,
I'm starting to go back online, so that's really important. I've got three, I think, free classes coming up. I'm taking a month off after writing another book, and I'm in search of beauty. I'm going back to British Columbia to with my partner and my dog, and just take a month to chill after this intense period. I just finished a book a year ago, and now I have another one coming out. So it's been a pretty intense year. But
no,
then in September, I'll be starting again mid-September, and I have I still call it relational intimacy course, which is a really powerful 3-day course that I do. And then I'm doing circles still, and those are 4-month commitments that people commit to do the really deeper work. If people want to do the really deep work, that's where you go, is with small groups of people together doing really deep work for a period of time. It's not for the faint of heart, though. It's for those who really want to do the deep work.
yeah, people are up for it,
Yeah,
as we
yeah.
say here in England or in Wales, rather. So, Michael, the world's an interesting place at the moment. There's an awful lot going on, and um, there's all sorts of factors going on that some people are finding they have to struggle with.
Mm.
Um, whether they feel they're struggling on their own or they're struggling with their family or their community, whatever it is. And there are some incredible things happening and unfolding, like your work, for example. And oh, is there some, and you're obviously tuned in your own way to the, the moment. I'm going to say like the moment of things now. Is there something that you feel really moved to say to the rest of us in relationship to how we are kind of metabolizing and experiencing and navigating this moment that we're all in together?
Mm. Yeah. Now, the first thing that comes up is you're not alone. That's really important to begin to recognize. It's really, I think, when I talk about lenses, I think we need to really there's the negativity bias that is very powerful that pulls us into, oh, it's so bad, climate change, it's so much the wars, all the things. And yes, it is a lot, but back away from the media a little bit. And first of all, meditation is essential. The world is moving too fast for our nervous system. Our nervous system was not designed for AI. It was not designed for this huge awareness of the world in some ways. In other ways, it's time to move out of my head and into my heart and my body. And any practices you can do that bring you into your heart, that you can really, sensing is not um, thinking. We've got to move from the thinking mind to the sensing body. And that's, I think, the most important thing. But also begin to scan for what's actually, there's amazing things. I have to tell you, I went to a concert the other night. So I'm in Nevada City, gold country. We have this big miners foundry, which has been turned into a dance place and a place we do workshops and things. It's a beautiful old building and and they were doing something for the river. We're very big about rivers around here. We live in a country with a beautiful Yuba River and other rivers around us, and we've been protecting that river as a community for as long as I've been here. It started 35 years ago, probably, that we started the protection of the rivers. And so they did a benefit and for Circle. It's our river, South Yuba River group, and they had an artist do all these pictures and then put pictures of the people who came to the river and were healed, ex-convicts and people who were on drugs and all that, and how the healing of the river, being in nature and being in the river in this beautiful place that I live was healing them. So, I went there and I met the artist and we had a really great conversation. I looked at all her work and it started like at 5 o'clock and which is kind of early for that. And then there was a concert at 7. So we came early and I looked in the hall and there were no chairs. I thought that's interesting. And then I thought I'd like to have a glass of wine before, this starts and just kind of relax with my partner. And so we went next door was the winery. So we went to the winery, had a glass of wine. We pulled a couple chairs. I took a senior privilege and put a couple chairs on the side and put my bags on them. So very few people wandering around looking at the art. I come back 5 minutes to 7 before the music starts, and I walk in, and there's like 400 people sitting on the floor. All, not all, but young families mostly with kids all over the place. I got it. Oh, the bar's closed 5 o'clock. Now it made sense, right? With all these local artists and here doing this benefit. And I looked around that room and I went, oh my God, this is the future. I was just in tears. I'd look and there were mothers and, they were all there and kids. And I thought, how beautiful is this? And we miss that. There are things everywhere. I'm sure there's many places in London, a lot of these groups are, into psychedelics and experimental ways of being with consciousness and studying consciousness. So I think this is a time where we need to get connected beyond just our circle and really get connected. I mean, in the US, 1 in 3 adults do not have anybody they could call in an emergency. 1 in 3 adults. That's insane. And yet we're all connected already. And that's the thing to remember, that we always were connected. We never were separate from nature. We never were separate from our ancestors. We never were separate, from our community. And so can we particularly, so one of the things about community, it's really interesting, or the um, uh, belonging. One of the things about belonging that's really interesting is, oh, I belong to this group. I belong to this particular group, and I feel a sense of belonging. But how much is that belonging actually a function of being separate from those other people that aren't like these people?
Yes,
And this is where I want to turn attention to, is how is this belonging here keeping me separate from those other people who are not as conscious or not as experienced, or like that.
not
So
as
that's a
cool.
real area of, I think, for exploration for people.
100%. I think that's a beautiful point. Because
Yeah.
with our mind, we're perfectly capable of screwing up the most amazing insight, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Michael, it's been such a pleasure having you back on. I feel like we could just talk for hours. And,
I know we could.
and I just really want to say to everybody, do check out Michael's work at welloflight.com, because it really is beautiful work. You've heard him speaking today. He's been helping people selflessly and beautifully for many, many years. He knows what he's doing, and he's a very kind and lovely man. So, Michael, I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. And I will do a little plug for myself, which my marketing coach has persuaded me I have to do, which is I'm actually helping people who are spirit-led, conscious leaders and practitioners step deeper into their calling and bring more life to it. So if you feel like my energy might be something you could dance with and you'd find it helpful, you can book a clarity call via the show notes at beingspace.world/clarity. Michael, thank you again. Is there anything you'd like to say just finally before we wind up?
Oh, it's just so good to be with you, Catherine, and thank you for the work you do and doing these beautiful podcasts with so many people. It's just such a gift to humanity, and I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you, sir. Bless you. And thank you, everybody else. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Michael.